Hi, everybody. Good Tuesday night. The days all blend together in the summer, even though I'm still at work and I'm at school every day. Hope everybody's doing well. Good to see everybody coming in. Tonight, we're going to do a session. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. I'm going to talk about the value of having an early win and rolling admission schools on your students' lists. And I want you to know that you can ask questions. We don't have any questions in the queue already for tonight, but if you have questions on anything I talk about or anything else that's bothering you or making you wonder about the college admissions process, please go ahead and put it in the chat and I'm happy to answer it tonight. So you don't have to just ask about the things that I'm talking about. You can ask about whatever you want. All right, so let's get started. So we talk about the early win, and that is when you are working on college applications the summer before senior year, you're trying to solidify and like narrow down the college list, where they're going to apply. There are counselors who think that students should have it nailed down by now, but I'm more of an organic, like sometimes, we're working with human beings and there's schools that we add and schools that we drop from the list organically as the process goes on. But one of the things that I do feel very strongly about is that every student should have at least two likely schools that they like, likelier schools that they like. I've been playing around with my words lately, and I think likelier schools is where I'm landing. Um, because a lot of people ask me, and I had people asking me even today, how many schools should I be applying to? And for me, honestly, the answer at this point is after you can tell me that you have two schools on your list that are likely or very likely for you to get into, like we're reasonably sure that this is going to happen, that you can afford comfortably slash mostly comfortably, because college is expensive, and that you don't have to love, but you have the potential to love. You like them enough that you can potentially love them and you could see yourself there and you could wear the merch and you are all in. If you have two of those schools, then I honestly don't care how many other schools you apply to. I just want you to have at least two choices. So, some of those choices could be one of these early win schools. And what I call an early win school is a rolling admission school, and I will define that in a minute, um, that is known to have quicker decisions in the fall. And that means, I consider early results to be in the September, October range. There's not a lot of schools that still give decisions in August, although I'm going to go over a couple of schools that have some special programs. Rolling admissions is when a school, a university or college accepts applications as they come in and evaluates them as they come in. They don't wait for a certain date to just release the decisions. So, a lot of schools in the past few years have gone to an early action or early decision model where there is a single deadline and then there is a release date. And some of them will have an early action deadline, for instance, a decision release date, and then after that, they're rolling. So, for instance, here in Florida, some of our state universities, like Florida Atlantic University or the University of Central Florida, UCF, have an early action date in October or November, and then they release decisions starting in December. But after that, everything's rolling. Like as things come in, they evaluate them and they're giving out decisions like every 2 weeks or every week. However, a lot of universities are still on a model where they will do that just from the get-go. And that's what I'm talking about tonight. So I know you're wondering, well, what are those schools? And why is this valuable? Like why is this a thing? This is a valuable thing to have on a student's list because I think that we underestimate a lot of the time exactly how much stress our students are under with this college admissions process. And I am never ceased to be amazed by the fact that students honestly believe they're not going to get into college at all. And not talking about Harvard, not talking about Duke, talking about they just don't think they're not going to get into college. And even our high achieving students who really should not be worried and really should know that they can go to college, really feel a lot better once they know that they could go to a college. There is a place that they could go to. And I saw this play out in my own home 3 times now with, I'm now on my third child. I'm taking him to college tomorrow. Um, and with my first child who just graduated from an Ivy League school in May, he had immaculate grades and good test scores and everything else. And he applied to Arizona State in August of his senior year, submitted his application at the end of August. He had been to Arizona State. He hadn't really toured the campus, but he had been there for a volleyball tournament and he had kind of seen the campus and he really loved the city. And so for him, he was really excited about Arizona State. It wasn't just a throwaway app. It wasn't just I'm going to apply there because I think I can get in there. It was, I actually really like the campus and that's a cool place. And he's very into sports. So he thought that, the Sun Devils, it would be a cool place for him to go. Um, Arizona State does not have a holistic evaluation. They actually have a minimum threshold that you need to meet in order to get into the school. And, that might be evolving over the next few years, but at this point, it's still they have a pretty high acceptance rate. Um, they look at grades, which you are allowed to self-report at Arizona State, or you can send them a transcript. And they look at test scores if you submit them. And then they give you an answer in like 2 or 3 weeks. So he got that acceptance in September, like mid-September. And when he got it, his shoulders like actually physically dropped. Like you could see the relief and he got this huge smile on his face. And to me, I think that was the first time that I realized like this shouldn't have been a surprise to him that he got in. I don't know that he was surprised, but it was surprising how relieved he was. And the fact that he was like, I can go to college now. Like I have a college. And to get that kind of answer in September, when you're basically still at the beginning of the process, is kind of a gift. And I see this every year when students get into that first school. They're like, okay, I have a place to go. Like someplace said they wanted me to come there. And it really is a big deal. So I encourage everybody to think about trying to add one of these schools to the list. Now, if you just add it to the list and your student knows nothing about it and doesn't really care about it, it's not as big of a gift because they would not really consider going there. But if you take some of these suggestions and you look into them and you find a place that actually has a program that's interesting, these are legit awesome schools. Like every school I'm going to mention tonight is a great place to go to college. So I think it's important to take them seriously and take this process seriously. So I'm going to mention some of the schools. A lot of them are favorites of mine, and I'll mention those first, clearly. But I also think that, wherever you are in the country, it's important to look around at some of the schools around you and see if they offer rolling admissions and, decisions that come in a little bit earlier than November or December so that you can add those to your students list. So some of the first ones that I'll mention are public state universities. A lot of them are public. Not as many private schools do this, although some private schools open their applications early. They don't necessarily give you an answer early. But the University of Pittsburgh is one of my favorites, and it's like I love that school as a place for a lot of my students to put on their list. They have a great honors program. They have beautiful architecture. The city of Pittsburgh is awesome. I always say it's such an unfortunate name, Pittsburgh, but maybe they are getting kind of a resurgence of popularity thanks to The Pit, the television show, because I hear it's very popular with the kids and with their parents too. I haven't seen it yet. I don't get to watch TV during the year because I'm too busy, but I'm hoping I get to see some of it this summer. So Pittsburgh would be high on my list. If you get your application in on the early side, you can get an answer on the earlier side. It's not super early, but it's definitely before November. The honors college is going to give you an answer later than that, but actual University of Pittsburgh you can apply to earlier. And they don't look at essays for Pittsburgh. They look at them for the Honors College, but not for the university itself. And they use the SRAR, which is now going to rename itself to the STARS this summer. So that is a self-reported transcript. And so you don't even have to ask your school counselor for a transcript, which is awesome. Speaking as a school counselor, it's always good when you can submit your transcript without having to worry about whether or not your counselor is back at school yet. In the Midwest, we have some great options. Iowa and Iowa State. The University of Iowa, so well known for their writing program and for a lot of other reasons. And Iowa State, great athletics, really good school spirit. Both of them have rolling. Oregon and Oregon State in the Pacific Northwest both have rolling, and you can get pretty early decisions from them as well, which is awesome. And the kids love Oregon and Oregon State. And I think between those two, I think Oregon State's more rural. I have not actually visited yet. I need to get out there. And the University of Oregon is a little bit closer to the coast, but really, really great schools with really, really great programs. So again, these aren't schools that are like, schools you shouldn't consider. These are awesome places, but you can also get an answer from them really quickly. In going down from there, Colorado State also has rolling and some early action, like early results. The University of Arkansas, which, listen, University of Arkansas shows really well. Kids love it. One of my friends just took her daughter to go see it last week and said, we had no idea, like she fell in love with it. It's great, especially like from a school spirit standpoint. Like if your kids are talking about a big SEC school or a big football school, don't sleep on Arkansas. Like go look at it. And I'm an SEC football fan and I'm like, Arkansas? But it's supposed to be awesome. So it's another one that I need to go look at. Ole Miss and Mississippi State, both you can get answers pretty quickly from them, and their applications open pretty early. And neither one of them require an essay, if I remember correctly. Ole Miss might, but I think Mississippi State does not. So I'd have to check on that. Also, if I say something about like requirements and they're different, like just know things change every year. And right now we're in that quiet period where people are working on their applications for next year on the college side as well. So sometimes things change. So, don't be like, don't come at me, don't at me if they change. But this is how it's been. Also in the SEC, Mizzou, another great school. Amazing journalism program, and it's not limited enrollment, so you can apply there for journalism and get in. If you get into Mizzou, you get into the School of Journalism if you want to. I believe they're also really strong in business. And again, SEC football, SEC school, big school spirit, and they also have rolling. Trying to see which other ones I want to tell you about. Couple of special programs. Montclair State in New Jersey, which is a really great regional university. They have rolling admission and early results, but also they have a program that started, I believe they already opened their application in June. So they have really early applications open, and that's a great school. I think that people forget, I have so many students who want to be in New York City. And, I mean, yes, I love New York City. I lived in New York City. I think it's amazing. But also, I think that there's a lot of value to being just outside New York City and being able to get to the city whenever you want to, but not living there necessarily in terms of cost and everything else. So I look for schools like Montclair State and Rider and Drew University in New Jersey that are great schools and have really tight-knit campuses, but also are not like smack dab in the middle of New York City. There's a lot to be said for that. In North Carolina, which is very popular here in Florida, there's Wingate University in North Carolina, and they open their applications. I believe they might be open July 1st. They usually give a decision within 2 to 3 weeks. And there's also one of my very favorites, Appalachian State, which is in Boone, North Carolina. A small state university, like I think it's about 12 or 14,000 students, right there at the foothills of mountains. Like you are basically surrounded by mountains, very close to Blowing Rock, which is a very fancy mountain town. But Boone is kind of the hippie younger sister, and so beautiful there, and a lot of school spirit. And their football stadium is so cool. It's built into the side of a mountain. Um, so you get all the benefits of like, fun football and basketball and school spirit. And they're very well known for like their graphic design department and some of their art programs. Um, yeah, it's a great school, and you can get decisions from them pretty quickly too. Other than that, there's schools like Eastern Carolina, which is another one in the Carolinas. They also have rolling. And trying to see, oh, and Auburn. So Auburn isn't completely rolling, but Auburn has different early action deadlines. And their first early action deadline is, I believe, mid-September. There might be one in mid-August, and you'll find out by mid-September if you submit by then. And then if you submit by mid-September, you find out by mid-October. And Auburn is also not holistic on at least their first review, so it's really easy to apply, and they get you the decision pretty quickly. They might defer you if they are hedging their bets on if you're on the bubble, like stats wise for them, but a lot of my students apply really early to Auburn and get a decision pretty quickly. So those are kind of the basics. There's also the University of Montana at Montana State. I will tell you that the children in my household have applied to Montana State. Have they ever been to Montana? No. We would all like to go to Montana, but they have not actually been there. But Montana State in Bozeman, when you apply there, first of all, it looks beautiful, and they have some amazing programs. And all of my children were willing to consider Montana State, actually. This last child, pretty seriously, actually. And when my first child applied there, the mayor of the town of Bozeman like sent him a certificate for getting in, which I thought was adorable. Um, I don't know if that's the adjective they'd like me to use about them, but I thought that was so cute. So in any case, it's great. It's a very legit place. So yeah, so that's a sampling of my favorites. There are schools like the University of Alabama does rolling admissions, and you can get an answer from them pretty quickly. Not as quickly as you hear from some of these other schools, but pretty early in the fall. Um, and there's places like Ohio, Ohio University, or Western Washington, Washington State. They also do it too. So lots of places to look at, you guys. And I think, oh, and Texas Tech, that's a big one that came up a lot in conversations and very popular with students, Texas Tech. Also one of the more affordable options. And they give out-of-state students some money to come, which is always a bonus. So yeah, so that's what we got. The University of Arizona, notably, used to be early on their decision results and rolling, much like Arizona State. But this year, the University of Arizona is moving to an early action deadline and then a release date later on. So they are not going to be like that anymore, which is kind of a shame. And I was telling Lisa from Grown and Flown that our Florida public state universities used to be more on the rolling side, but now none of them are, and which is kind of a bummer. The only one in the state that does anything like that is the University of North Florida, who has an apply in July program where if students they get their application, a copy of their unofficial transcript, and a copy of their test scores in by July 20th, then they can go to a program at the University of North Florida on July 26th, and they can get their decision on the spot, which is kind of cool. There are some other schools that do on the spot decisions, but not a lot anymore. You'd have to check with local, like regional schools if they do it. I know Bard used to do it. Not sure if they still do it, but they probably do. And High Point University also does a program where they invite students to campus and then they can give them their decisions on the spot. So you can look into those. Bard, yeah, Bard has done it. Yeah. I'm not sure if they still do it, but they did it as of a couple of years ago. So you can look and see if they're still doing it. I don't know if they are, but yes. Okay, does anybody have questions? I see that there's a lot in the chat, but I think it's mostly Lisa putting in my examples. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about rolling decisions? They're usually pretty simple applications. And for the most part, they're usually asking for an unofficial transcript, or you can ask for your counselor to send a transcript if they're not accepting self-reported transcripts. Do I know anything about Michigan? Okay, so Michigan definitely does not have this program. Michigan is very much in early action. And remember, Michigan receives 105,000 applications a year, many of those in the early action round. So they're not, Michigan's early action round decisions come out in January, and then they have regular decision. Michigan State has been rolling decision, but the word on the street was that they are dropping it. I do not know that for sure, but word on the street is maybe moving towards an early action deadline. So we're going to have to see when they open applications this year and see what they say about that. I hope they keep rolling a little bit because that was a great one, but I didn't mention it because, yeah. Oh, about Bard getting smaller. So somebody asked, Bard's gotten smaller. Do I know anything about that? I think it's under 2,000 now, possibly. So, yeah, I mean, small, expensive liberal arts colleges are struggling at the moment. Not all of them, but a lot of them are, in the next few years, they are going to be fighting for fewer students applying to college and fighting for students who are not thrilled about paying, $80,000 a year to go to school. So colleges like Bard are going to have a harder time, and that is nothing to do with the quality of Bard. I mean, I think Bard is a really special place and so wonderful for the students who it is right for. But I will say that, I think we're going to see more and more of these smaller colleges like Bard having to fight for students and having to, figure out how to do that, especially if we continue to have uncertainty about international students coming in. So anything about Union? Yeah, so Union is struggling too. Union had a hard time this year filling their class, and I love Union. It's one of my like little hidden gem favorites, especially, it's hard to find a school that size that also is so strong in engineering. But yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of, the state of New York has a lot of small private liberal arts colleges and colleges the size of Union, and they're going to be fighting for those students. I know, it's pretty sad. I'm really sad about it. I'm hoping that everybody can figure out a way to make things work and balance their budgets, but like Clark in Massachusetts just had to cut programs. I really love Clark too for the students who it serves. Guilford College in North Carolina, which is one of the colleges that changed lives, they also are struggling, and they're in danger of losing their accreditation if they can't pull the cash together. And I mean, it's a tiny school, so all of those are on your list. I have not heard about Skidmore struggling too much, so yeah. And listen, what you should do now, I think that with Clark and with Union, I think that you should talk to those schools when you go and visit, or if you've already visited, don't be afraid to ask your local representative, your local admissions counselor who's in charge of your territory, to talk to you about how they're restructuring their programs in order to account for their budgets. A lot of the schools that are cutting programs or having to consolidate things, they're doing it in a way that it makes sense. And they've known that the college going population was going to be dropping for a while, and so a lot of them have really made thoughtful cuts, or they're consolidating in places where the majors weren't very popular to begin with, and that kind of thing. So don't I'm not saying that all these places are going to close. I'm just saying that they're going to have to figure things out. And, you know, and yeah, and some of them will close, but I'm not saying that Union or Clark will. I just that everybody is kind of having a moment right now where they're having to figure things out. And it's not a great time to be in enrollment in higher education, unfortunately. Oh, Muhlenberg. Yeah, Muhlenberg. I have not heard anything specific about Muhlenberg in terms of their enrollment, but I will say Muhlenberg is a super popular choice, really, really strong for musical theater and known for being a happy campus. So I don't know. I think you should ask them. I think you should talk to them and ask. I have not heard anything specifically about Muhlenberg, so I have not heard an update on them, but I love them. So. Um, Yes. So, can I go over what makes a school likelier? Yeah. So, a lot of the schools that I just listed off are, oh, and one of them that I forgot to mention was Loyola Chicago, in the city of Chicago, like right on the banks of the Lake Michigan. I love that school. First saw it because my son wanted to go to a volleyball tournament there, and we saw a volleyball match there, and they're really strong in men's volleyball, which is niche, but still. They have a lot of school spirit and a really strong community feel, and I have some really, really happy kids there. But Loyola Chicago, along with other schools that I mentioned, has a really high acceptance rate. And I think that we tend to, parents, and I include myself, um, tend to associate a low acceptance rate with quality of school, which is not valid. Like, that's not true. And especially in the next few years, as people are figuring out how to configure their enrollment strategy so that they can account for all the different factors that are at play right now. Schools have to admit more students in order to fill their class sometimes. And that doesn't mean that they're not a great school. It means that they might be such a great school that they're on the same list as a lot of other schools that really high quality students and profiles are applying to. So, those students might have a lot of choices, and they need to make sure they admit enough students to fill their class eventually. So, like, Auburn's an amazing school, and has gotten a lot more selective, but they still have, several rounds of admissions. And Iowa and Iowa State are amazing, but they are going to accept a lot of students compared to like Michigan. Um, and that's just because, they need to fill their class. So, uh, what makes a school likelier, I look for a high acceptance rate. And I think that we should celebrate schools that accept a lot of students. So look for schools that accept more than 50% of their students. That would be your first step. And then it does depend on your student and their profile, what is going to be likelier for them. But I still say that, if you notice, like Arizona State has a super high acceptance rate. Um, but that was the likelier school that we had on the list for our son who, you know, ended up going to Princeton. And yeah, I mean, the University of Florida was likely for him, which is not a likely school for almost anyone, but for him it was. But I would not have called Florida, like, that wouldn't have been a good thing to be in his likely spot just because we can't guarantee it. Um, but Arizona State was. That was a great school for him to have as a likely school. So a likelier school. Um, So yeah, it does depend on your student and their profile. Um, and for instance, my youngest son, who is going to college tomorrow, Arizona State was not as likely for him because of his GPA and his test score. So it was not a likelier school for him, but it was a school that we were pretty sure he could get into just because of the threshold. And he applied there early too and got that answer earlier too. Do I think Rose Holman will struggle to enroll students? Um, Not that I have perceived. I think Rose Holman is a small school that is really, really, really good at what it does. And again, it's hard to find a school that size that is so good at engineering. So I think that they'll be okay for a little while. It's also in a different place. The state of New York has a ton of small private colleges, but Indiana does not. So, I mean, they do, but they don't. Yeah. I think Rose Holman is going to be okay, as far as I know. I, again, I I just went there in April, and they seemed like pretty healthy, and um, lot of kids there. Like for them, they're little, but community is great. I missed the part about why some of these schools are having a hard time enrolling students. So, uh, um, they're not having a hard time enrolling students. It's just that there's fewer students. So we are at the very beginning of what they're calling like a demographic cliff. It's not so much a cliff, like falling straight off in a vertical line, but we are at a point, and I don't know if you saw Andy Borst's session with Grown and Flown a couple of weeks ago. If not, I'm sure Lisa can drop the recording link in the thank you. So he actually talked about Andy Borst, who's he's a VP of enrollment at the University of Georgia, talked about this demographic cliff and where states have fewer students, fewer college going age students coming up. And we're at the beginning of it. If you remember, about 18 years ago was when we had a recession. And in times of economic instability, people have fewer babies. I learned this from a classmate of mine from college who is an economist who specializes in these things, and she is the one who explained this to me. So apparently, when there is less money and less certainty about money, people actually do not have babies. And so the recession of 2007, 2008, like 2009, like that whole area of time was the beginning of people kind of slowing down having children. And then the pandemic also, there was actually not a pandemic baby boom. It was more of a baby bust, because even though everybody was home together, people were so worried about the future that they were not necessarily having babies. So this year, last year was the highest number of college going age children for a long time, for the foreseeable future. There are a few states where the population is not dropping off. That includes Florida, where I am, but our growth is going to continue, but also be a little more modest than it's been. So I think we're projected to go up 12%, which is pretty high, but I think we're one of the higher people. New York State is dropping precipitously. They're losing a lot of college age students. So the reason that people are going to have a hard time filling their classes is that there are going to be fewer kids. I think that right now people are worried about money, and those colleges are really expensive. Um, and some of them, I mean, Case Western Reserve, Syracuse University, uh, these are schools that their cost of attendance is $91,000 a year unless you're getting merit aid, and that is a lot of money. So people are going to be looking at their state universities a little more closely, and small private liberal arts colleges are going to struggle. And that has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with factors. Also, international students usually pay more than domestic students do. A lot of colleges are need aware with international students, and they, like my local private liberal arts college, Rollins College, which I am a big, big, big fan of. they are need aware for international students and make sure that international students can pay what they need to pay in order to come here. And if we are not able to get international students visas and get them over here, then they're going to struggle to fill their classes that way too, and struggle budget wise. So we're just going to have to see how things play out. And I don't think anybody knows how that's gonna end at the moment. So yeah. All right. I don't see a ton of questions, so I'm just going to like do a little bit of freewheeling here, and then we can call it a night maybe. But basically, just right now, I am meeting with my rising seniors, and we're getting started on the Common App. I think Stephanie Mead did a session last week where she went over walking everybody through the Common App step by step. We're doing the things that we can do over the summer. I am emphasizing to students, and this is my philosophy, I still want my rising seniors to have a summer and to, have the ability to decompress a little bit. I know my students in the Northeast are still finishing up high school for the year, so there's no huge rush. Like nobody is bleeding out. I promise you, the colleges are, not worried about students getting a jump on things right now. They're either going on vacation or dealing with wait lists or dealing with transfer students. But I do think it's good to knock out several elements if you can over the summer, including just that main Common App section that's really tedious, just all their contact information, the activity section, uh, working on their personal essays, and then if you can get started on the STAR, which is the self-reported transcript, a lot of colleges use it. So it's basically just putting data, your grades and classes into a portal. So if they can knock that out, then I think that's great. Okay, how does early action relate and early decision to, how does early action relate to, Jewel, can you tell me what you mean? How does early action relate to what? And then I will answer. You mentioned that some schools don't look holistically at the student, so they are only looking at GPA, courses, and test scores to make a decision. Yes, absolutely. A lot of these schools don't have a staff to do a holistic review, and a lot of them are looking just at their academics, and that's fine. They're looking at the rigor of their transcript, the grades that they achieved in those classes, and their test scores if they are test required, or if they're test optional if students submitted them. So yeah, there are a lot of schools that are still pretty cut and dried that way. And that's a good thing because they're a lot easier to apply to and you don't have to answer a lot of essay questions. How many likelier colleges do you suggest in a balanced list? At least two. At least two. And I would make it higher. I think a lot of people would tell you three, and I mean, I would love three, but I know after doing this so much and for so long that it's really hard for students to find two to three likelier schools that they genuinely, honestly, full chest really like. And so I try to keep my ask of them small, but yeah, two to three schools that they genuinely would go to and not be sad about it and not feel disappointed in it, but actually like. I will tell you that for my own children, those schools have included Furman University, where my second child is going to be a senior. Um, they have a 72-ish% acceptance rate for boys, especially because they're small and private liberal arts. They don't have engineering. So they have a lot more women applying there than men. Um, but it's a pretty high acceptance rate, especially for boys. And my children love that school. And I have so many good things to say about that school. Um, so and they are pretty generous with merit aid too. My third son, was accepted this year and was given their $29,000 merit scholarship. I think somewhere around that, with a B average, and he did not submit test scores. So if that tells you anything, they are very generous with merit aid, and they try to make it more doable. Still a lot of money compared to a state university, but it's more doable. And Arizona State was definitely high on their list. Another one that my children loved was, well, at least the third one. He really loved the University of Kentucky, much to my Gator fan parents' chagrin, who said, "What are you thinking? Like applying to other SEC schools?" But the University of Kentucky is awesome. And if you're interested in medical fields or pre-health or nursing, I mean, the hospital facilities on campus are pretty awesome. And their dorms are amazing. They have new dorms. They have the largest Starbucks in the state of Kentucky. They have a really nice honors college that was pretty much built by hand by the former director of the honors college at Penn State, Schreier. It's a really great honors program. So a lot of great things going for it at the University of Kentucky. Plus, you have Kentucky basketball. You have SEC football, if that's what you want. Greek life, great engineering school, pretty awesome. It's really green in the spring. It is cold. It's colder for my kiddos here in Florida. It's a little cold, but if you want seasons, it's definitely something. So, yeah. To finding likelier schools, it seems that some state universities and highly selectives do not even offer EA. Right. It's true. So, yes. So some state universities, Michigan, Chapel Hill, um, they don't, and University of Florida, they do not offer early decision. Um, but they do offer EA. Highly selective schools do offer EA, but it's restrictive. If you're talking about Stanford, Princeton, Harvard, or Yale, and Notre Dame and Georgetown also have somewhat restrictive early action plans. Yes. But yes, that is true. So restrictive, yes. So Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Stanford, you can only apply, if you apply to one of those early action, any of those four, you can't apply to any other private schools early action. You can only apply to public state universities or the UK early action. Well, the UK doesn't really have early action, but you can apply to the UK, you can apply to state universities, but you can't apply to any other private schools. So you can't apply to both Harvard and Yale early action. You can only apply to one of them early action. And in terms of other forms of restrictive early action, Georgetown and Notre Dame, if you apply to one of them early action, you can't apply early decision anywhere else. So yeah, they have their own rules. If my student has a niche area of interest, jazz, are there resources that can help him identify schools that have strong programs, or does he need to look at every school's website? Um, that's a good question. I would actually, the way that I tackle that is, uh, there is a great, and I'm just gonna promote this book for all of you. I think it's a great book. The College Finder. It's by Stephen Antonoff, and the latest edition just hit Amazon and his own website. So you can order the College Finder, called the College Finder, and he does a really good job of having you look up certain areas of interest like jazz, and he will have a list of schools for that. So thank you, Lisa. So yeah, it's a great book. It's a great resource. It's a great way to find schools. Other than that, I would go to like jazz organizations or websites sometimes have recommendations for jazz studies programs um, or better jazz programs. Other than that, I mean, I would just be using the internet and then like looking them up one by one, but there might be a better way to do that. I, but my first resource would be the College Finder, and then I would go on. You can also look for if there's a professor or someone that like someone you trust in the jazz world. They might have recommendations for programs or teachers, like jazz teachers, things like that. How do they know? So how do the schools know if you've broken the restrictive early action rules? Um, I mean, the short answer is they might not, but if someone tells on you, going to have your admission rescinded or your application canceled. So there's that. Um, Also, your school counselor should know, and your school counselor should not be sending a transcript out to more than one school if they know that you're applying to one of them. I have to basically approve of every application that gets sent out. Um, and I'm not going to send transcripts to both Princeton and Yale if for early action. And I'm not going to have my letter of recommendation sent to both schools early action. So school counselors act as gatekeepers to a certain extent. And the other thing that keeps people in line is that there's a lot of tattling in college admissions and a lot of people tell on each other. So wouldn't do it. But yeah, that's how they tell most of the time. My student has not narrowed down to a specific career interest, but says he wants to do something creative, writing, music, drama. It feels hard to narrow down a list of where to apply when his interests are so broad. I mean, I think that you don't have to have it narrowed down as long as you're cool applying to colleges where they're not going to care if you've narrowed it down. So there are certain universities like the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign or the University of Texas at Austin or the Universities of California where your major is really important. Although I would say at the University of California, like any of them, if it's like in the arts, that's going to be in its like in its own pool, basically. Um, but yeah, I would say that if you go to a liberal arts college where you're going to cover your bases, or you go to a university with a liberal arts program or idea, then you can probably narrow it down after you go to university. And then you can always do an MFA if they want to specialize in a fine art in a graduate program. So that's how I would tackle that. I will be honest, not a lot of 17-year-olds know what they want to do with the rest of their lives. And this generation, um, they're not predicted to have like just one career. They're predicted to have several careers in their lifetime. And so I think that it's important for us to approach that from a point of view of we want you to go to college to learn how to think and learn how to pivot and learn the transferable skills you're going to need no matter what you do. Because to be honest with you, I mean, would any of us have predicted that this could be a career like on a Zoom with people from all over the country uh, giving advice about when I was in college? This was not a thing. So I think it's really important to learn how to learn and learn how to pivot and learn the skills that you're going to need no matter what, especially with AI entering the picture. When I'm talking to my classmates from college who are working in finance and industry, all kinds of industry, we've talked a lot about how, you know, you can't really beat AI at a lot of things as a human, but you can beat them at being human. And so, you know, I think that learning to think critically and learning how to bring the human aspect and be the human driver behind technology, AI, in whatever field they go into is going to be pretty critical going forward. So I would look for those, even if your student is going into a STEM field, you want them to be able to read and write and communicate and think. And even if your student is going into, you know, something that has nothing to do with AI at this point, I think it would be really important for them to learn how to pivot. Yep. Yes. What do I think will be different with admissions this year due to all of the chaos? Good question. Um, I'm talking to admissions counselors every day. I think that enrollment strategy is really what's going to be different. And I mean, for that, I think that they're just going to have to widen their nets recruitment wise, which isn't going to really change the way they evaluate students or the way that they think about what they want for their campuses. So, from a parent and student perspective, my message to students is always that all anybody wants is for students to be the best versions of themselves. Like all they should do is try and be the best. As Rick Clark says from Georgia Tech, you know, good high school students make good college students. Be in high school, be yourselves, be the best versions of yourselves you can be. think about what you're doing and why you're doing it. I ask kids to pay attention to themselves, like what lights you up, what makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning. Hopefully there is something. If there's not, let's find something. Uh, but I don't think very much changes for students. For families, I think that we all need to think about cost. I think that we all need to think about making a list and, hopefully keeping an open mind about that list. And one thing I would really love parents to do in this upcoming cycle is think very critically about how we define a good life for our kids. Um, because I think I have a different perspective now with a child on the other side of college graduation, and also just having been through, 4 teenagers now. I'm on my fourth teenager. And I think we really need to think critically about what makes a good life. Our kids, do they need to be millionaires? Do they need to be captains of industry? Or do we really want them to find something that, I think happiness is a big ask, but maybe content. And like, where is that sweet spot where you like your life and you like getting up in the morning and you like going to work? I love what I do. I work really hard, but I like what I do. And I'm never sad about working with teenagers. I want my children to find something that makes them this happy, in terms of they don't dread going to work and they don't dread what they do every day, and that they have a purpose. And I think it's really important to find a purpose outside of grades and outside of applications and outside of where you go to college and outside of what you do. I think it's really important to know what your purpose is in the world. And that sounds a little woo woo, but also mental health wise, I think it's really important for kids to feel like they have meaning outside of who they are going to be on a college application. So I'm not just saying it to be woo. I'm actually not a very woo woo person, but I do think purpose and meaning that does not come with an external grade or an external validation is super important for mental health. So I would like everybody to think about it and you know, think about what makes a good life. And I don't necessarily think that you need an Ivy League degree for a good life. And I don't think you need to go to the University of Florida to have a good life. Like, I think that you could find a place where you just need to find a school where you're going to grow and thrive and get to do what you want to do in your studies and make your friends that are going to be in your wedding. Or if you don't want to get married, that's absolutely fine too. But, be in your life for the rest of your life. Anyway. I will stop preaching now. In my experience, are there a set of, oh, but hold on. I want to finish answering Jack's question for a second. What do I think schools are going to do? I think schools are going to have to widen their nets recruitment wise, think a lot about their enrollment strategies for the next few years, and think about how to get their classes filled, but also keep the campus spirit that they're looking for, like the campus culture they're looking for. And I am super glad I don't work for a college right now. I think it's a hard job. Okay. In my experience, are there a set of schools, either selective or not, that I find most kids tend to be happy and thrive? Any specific schools where most kids report that they were glad they went there? Sometimes it's hard to gauge where a large set of schools are, yeah, where a large set of kids are happy when you cannot visit in person. I agree with you. One of those things you can do is, as I say in my social fit sessions, is read the school newspaper. I think you can get a lot of information from the op-ed pages. I realize it's summer, so there's not as much of that, but still. Are there a set of schools? It's so individual per student. I really feel like, you know, you are looking for the place where your student is going to be happy. And look, I have 4 children who are going to, so far, 3 very different places for college. And my fourth one is absolutely guaranteed to go to a wildly different place. But I will say, what I look for, like this April, I went to Purdue for the first time. I have never seen more students wearing their college merchandise on a campus before than Purdue. And I didn't call that one. That was not on my bingo card. But yes, like every kid I saw was wearing something Purdue, a beanie, sweatshirt, their backpack, their pants. Like I look for kids wearing their merchandise. That's if you can visit the campus. Otherwise, I look for alumni engagement. Um, how much are their alumni involved in helping with career development for their students? That's part of career services usually. I also look for, do they have reunions? Do alumni go back for reunions? Do alumni go back for homecoming? Um, and these are questions you can ask a college even if you can't visit. And what is their alumni? What are their alumni affairs like? I will tell you, like some schools that stand out to me are Colgate, which is fairly selective, but not, as selective as Duke. And Colgate has really high alumni engagement and a lot of alumni coming back to help with career services. And Colgate's not easy to get to. So that tells me something about Colgate. I look at places like the Ohio State University, and I'm rolling my eyes because I'm a Gator fan. Uh, and they have really rabid alumni, but also like just a lot of alumni engagement. Um, Virginia Tech tends to. Uh, then what was I going to say? There was one that I was on the tip of my tongue. I will tell you, my son at Furman, like Furman grads, love Furman. And I feel like his alumni network is super strong and very engaged for such a small school. Like they don't have as many alumni as some of these places, and their alumni are pretty fierce about Furman. I feel like they would be very ardent. Davidson College, very ardent alumni, love it. That was before Steph Curry came back. Um, they have great reunions. So that's just it's like a little bit, yeah. So I feel like I look for alumni because if alumni give back a lot, either with themselves or through their money or in whatever other way, you know that they had a good experience there. William and Mary is also known for happy kids, just so you know. I'm trying to think of schools off the top of my head. Um, yeah, so I would look for that. The University of Florida, we have a saying. I'm a big Gator fan, full disclosure, but the saying is Gators hire Gators, and Gator Nation is everywhere. And I do find that to be true. Gator fans are super loyal to Gator, like baby Gators, and hiring them, which I think is awesome. I can't say that everybody at the University of Florida is happy all the time. It's, it's a school that's really hard to get into, and I think that it can be really hard, but yeah. And yeah, so I would look for that. All right. I think I've hit everything, and I'm actually at 9 o'clock. Lisa's like, you might need to end early. You might not have as many questions, but I told her I talk a lot. So, that's never a problem for me. Thank you so much for showing up. This is so many people for a summer Tuesday. So I love getting to talk to actual people. So that's really fun. For all of you who are listening to the recording later, hello, maybe next time. And yeah, I hope to see you again soon. Everybody be well, and I'll see you in the group.